Okay, so they're in Proverbs chapter number 31, and people might think they know what the sermon's going to be at, but no, I'm not actually preaching on the virtuous woman, even though I'm in Proverbs chapter 31. The passage I want us to begin with this morning starts in verse number 4. Look at verse number 4. Proverbs 31 verse 4 says, "It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes strong drink, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted." So the title of the sermon this morning is, "It is not for kings to drink wine." Now, we're not going to go, later on we're going to look at verses 6 and 7. We're not going to do that just yet, we're going to do that later on in the sermon. And just to note, I'll mention it sort of earlier on, but just to underline this thing. In the sermon I'm talking about this morning, what's being preached this morning has nothing to do with salvation. Okay? It has absolutely nothing to do with salvation. You see, Jesus said, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." That's what Jesus said to do. In fact, if you look at, keep your finger in Proverbs, but look at Matthew chapter number 28, very famous verse. Matthew chapter 28 and verse number 19. Matthew chapter 28 and verse number 19. In fact, go back, verse 18, sorry. "And Jesus came and spake unto them, saying, All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore," notice that word again, "go ye therefore, and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you, and lo, I'm with you always, even unto the end of the world. Amen." So notice Jesus said, "Go and teach all nations." What are we supposed to teach them? We're supposed to teach them the gospel, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, that salvation is by grace through faith in Him. And then he says, and then baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And then he says, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. So you've got three parts, if you like. You've got preaching the gospel, then you've got baptizing the people to get saved, but then you've got teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And so we're not saved by keeping the commandments, but when people are saved, we should learn the commandments. Okay, and so that's what we're talking about this morning. I'm preaching about stuff that the Bible commands, which, as I say, has got nothing to do with salvation. Now, I like to preach an entire sermon against alcohol at least once per year. Okay, and you might say, is that a bit excessive to go over it again and again? Well, no, because I suppose it's one of those things. Paul, he actually writes in Philippians chapter 3, verse 1, he says, "Finally, my brethren, rejoice in the Lord." He says, "To write the same things to you, to me indeed is not grievous, but for you it is safe." So Paul was saying it's important that you get reminded of these things. Because, in fact, it says in Hebrews, it's important we take heed to things we've learned, lest we let them slip. And so it's important that we go over the basics again and again. And if you think about it, even just looking at the word wine, which we saw back in Proverbs chapter number 31, where it said it's not for kings to drink wine. Wine, you'll find wine mentioned in 273 verses. That's a lot of verses. That's a lot of mentions. That doesn't even include the ones that just talk about strong drink. Okay, and so if you compared it with something like tithing. Tithing wouldn't even have a quarter of those mentions, And so it's important that if the Bible mentions it, we should go over it. It's important to go over it. Now, I do mention alcohol in passing at various other times, but it's important to take the time to cover it more thoroughly every so often. So we're not going to go to all the references this morning, otherwise it wouldn't be this morning. You'd still be here tonight. It'd be like Eutychus falling out the window. Okay, but turn if you would to Isaiah chapter number 28. Isaiah chapter number 28. Isaiah chapter number 28. And we see an important principle here for learning the Bible. Isaiah chapter 28. Isaiah chapter 28 verse number 9. Isaiah 28 verse 9 says, "Whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breasts. For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little and there a little." So he's saying, look, precept, in other words, saying when you're learning the Bible, it's like a little bit goes on top of something else. You get a line here, you get a precept here, and so it's a little bit, it's like when you're learning anything. You just suddenly, do you go to some course and you just sit down for 1 hour and then it's finished and you've learned everything there is to learn? Or is it you learn something and then you learn something more and then you do something more, okay? So it's an important principle you understand. Now, we're actually there in Isaiah 28. Have a look back at verse number 1 while we're here. Isaiah chapter 28 verse number 1 says, "Woe to the crown of pride, to the drunkards of Ephraim, whose glorious beauty is a fading flower, which are on the head of the fat valleys of them that are overcome with wine. Behold, the Lord hath a mighty and a strong one, which as a tempest of hail and destroying storm, as a flood of mighty waters overflowing, shall cast down to the earth with the hand. Verse 3, the crown of pride, notice again, the drunkards of Ephraim shall be trodden under feet, and the glorious beauty, which is on the head of the fat valley, shall be a fading flower, and as the hasty fruit before the summer, which when he that looketh upon it seeth, while it is yet in his hand, he eateth it up. In that day shall the Lord of hosts be for a crown of glory, and for a diadem of beauty unto the residue of his people, and for a spirit of judgment to him that sitteth in judgment, and for strength to them that turn the battle to the gate. But, verse 7, look at that, but they also have erred through wine, and through strong drink are out of the way. The priest and the prophet have erred through strong drink. They are swallowed up of wine. They are out of the way through strong drink. They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. For all tables are full of vomit and filthiness, so that there is no place clean. So notice that. I mean, look, we can see in here that is alcohol a good thing? Does it sound like a good thing? He's talking about these drunkards, and is he talking to them as though, hey, you know, this is good to be like this? He's not. He's saying it's a bad thing. He says they've erred, verse 7. They've erred. They've gone the wrong way. They've erred. They've made. They're in error. They've erred through wine and through strong drink. Okay? They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. In other words, they can't tell what's right and what's wrong. They're making wrong judgments. And then the tables are full of vomit and filthiness. There is no place clean. So it's just speaking that, you know, alcohol is a bad thing. Now, do you really need me to tell you that? Or could you figure it out? You probably could. I mean, we arrived this morning and there was a whole pile of broken glass outside. There was bottles smashed everywhere. There's just, I mean, and how often do you see it around this neighbourhood? The vomit all over the streets. You know, people have been doing, and why is that? Why is it that it happens that you come on a Sunday morning it's like that, whereas it wasn't like that if you came on a Wednesday afternoon? Because on Saturday night, people all over here have been drinking alcohol. I mean, there's a guy who's constantly getting dragged off by the police. Why? Because he's getting in fights. He's assaulting people. He's smashing glass everywhere. Yeah. So it's an important thing we understand. Alcohol is not. It's not a good thing. Okay. Now, the world. I mean, obviously this morning I'm preaching you from the Bible, but the world will tell you that. You know, if you look at, in fact, I did look up. I looked up the Alcohol and Drug Helpline in New Zealand, just a sort of regular website. And this is what it has to say. It says alcohol, which is also called ethanol or ethyl alcohol, is the ingredient that's found in beer, wine and spirits which causes drunkenness. So this is the substance that causes people to get drunk. Alcohol is formed when yeast ferments. It means it breaks down without oxygen. It's the carbohydrates, the sugars in different food that get broken down. Wine, for example, gets made from the sugar in grapes. Beer comes from the sugar that's in malted barley. Cider comes from like the sugar in apples, or vodka, and you can make that out of potatoes and beets and all sorts of different things. There's all sorts of plants you can take and you can turn it into alcohol of different sorts. Now, ethanol, or alcohol, dissolves easily in water. So what that means is it can be actually rapidly absorbed throughout the body in the blood. Because you probably know we're made up mostly of water. And so alcohol, it goes throughout the body. It passes through the placenta, for example. It goes to the unborn child. It's also present in breast milk. If a lady's feeding her baby, and if she's been drinking alcohol, the baby gets the alcohol. It goes through in the breast milk. Okay, alcohol is the most widely used social drug in New Zealand. Alcohol is classed as a depressant. However, at low doses, it acts as a mild stimulant. That's why when people first start drinking, they get sort of more boisterous. They get louder. So initially, it acts as a stimulant. Okay, but then as the amount of alcohol in your bloodstream goes up, then the stimulation changes to sedation. It changes to sedation, stupor, coma, and finally death. Okay, that's the sort of the stages that you go through. Now, initially when someone drinks alcohol, and this is from this website, it says you experience a feeling of pleasure and relaxation. The more you drink, the higher your blood alcohol level becomes, and your body's reactions begin to slow down. You may experience slurred speech, inability to walk straight, and impaired judgment and coordination. So notice, interesting, that when you drink alcohol, what does it impair? Your judgment. And isn't that just what we read about here? They err in judgment. And coordination. You know, you think about people in fact, the Bible talks about people staggering because of having drink. Now, alcohol can be dangerous in smaller amounts if it's used in combination with other drugs. And of course, many people are on drugs these days. Okay, prescription medication. And they add alcohol to that. You know, some of the short-term effects on someone's health can include, you can put on weight. It'll affect your mood, your personality changes. You can have drink-related accidents. You can feel anxious. You can lose time at work, have headaches, impotence, high blood pressure, memory loss, confusion, disorganisation. These are all sort of short-term things that can happen. But then there's long-term effects. It can cause major damage to the brain, the central nervous system, the digestive system, the heart, the liver. You can increase risk of some forms of cancer. There can be psychiatric problems. You can be prone to depression. All these things can come about because of alcohol. Excess drinking can actually also lead people to be more likely to hurt others that are around them and to do things they wouldn't do. And we know this. This is common sense. That's why, if you worked at the accident emergency, when do they see the most people coming in that have been in fights, that have been assaulted? It's on Friday and Saturday night. And they're constantly dealing with people who are coming in who are intoxicated, and it's led to domestic violence, abuse, criminal offending of all sorts. I've been down to prison many times, and a whole pile of people I've talked to down there are in prison because of something they did when they were under the influence of alcohol. It causes relationship problems, injuries, all sorts of... people can have sexual encounters that they afterwards regret. There can be, suicide. All sorts of stuff can come because of alcohol. And in fact, not only that, and when someone is intoxicated, that person is actually more vulnerable to becoming a victim of violence. When you're drunk, then it's more likely that someone... because it's harder to keep yourself safe. You could end up going into a situation which you wouldn't have gone afterwards, otherwise, okay? Also, you have the aspect of psychological dependence. When someone uses a drug, it can become more important than anything else. I've got to drink, even though it's going to result in, my wife leaving me. I've got to drink, even though I'm going to lose my job. I've got to drink, even though I've got no money. Isn't that the case? Don't you see people wandering around picking up, the dregs and drinking dregs? You do. You see people in that sort of desperate state. But all people will resort to theft, stealing. They haven't got enough money, and so they all these different things. And once again, this is all still, this is not from the Bible. This is just straight from a plain old worldly website. Okay. And then it says physical dependence upon a drug occurs when a person's body is used to functioning with the drug present in the system. Alcohol dependence affects physical and mental health. It causes problems with family, friends, and work. It is characterised by a mental and/or physical need to consume alcohol in order to prevent the pains of withdrawal. And so it's like once someone's on that road, they're stuck. They have to keep on doing it and keep on doing it. Now that's, as I said, that's all what the world will tell you about alcohol. But what does the Bible say about it? Well, we just read in Isaiah, didn't we? It talked about it. It says they've erred through strong drink. They're swallowed up in wine. They err in vision. They stumble in judgment. The tables are full of vomit and filthiness, so there's no place clean. That seems to line up. Okay? And in fact, if you look back, and a great way when you're studying the Bible, if you want to find out about something, is go to the very start and look through at every mention where it talks about that. And the very first place you'll find alcohol mentioned in the Bible is in Genesis chapter number 9. Genesis chapter number 9. Genesis chapter number 9. Genesis chapter 9 and verse number 20. Genesis chapter 9 and verse number 20. Genesis 9:20 says, "And Noah began to be an husbandman, and he planted a vineyard, and he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine, and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant." And so notice what's happened here is that, and to be honest, this is not something where it clearly says what's happened, but I think we can probably conclude that something bad has gone on here. Noah, he drinks wine, he gets drunk, and he's uncovered in his tent. He's naked in his tent. Now Ham, the father of Canaan, sees the nakedness of his father. He tells his brothers about it. They come in and take a garment, they cover it up. Noah wakes up and he notices what his younger son had done. The interesting thing is, Ham was not Noah's younger son. And you might notice it says actually Ham, and notice it says the father of Canaan. Why is it saying the father of Canaan? And then later on we see it actually says that Noah then says, Cursed be Canaan. Because Canaan was the son. Like Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham and Japheth. And Canaan was the son of Ham. Why is it that he's cursing Canaan? The logical conclusion would be that Canaan did something to Noah. We don't know what it was, But the fact is, he was in his tent, he was drunk, and he was naked, and Canaan did something to him. Now, you might draw conclusions what that might be, and the fact is, in the world today, there are many people that do that they will abuse people through the use of alcohol. They'll get them drunk, and then they'll take advantage of them. They'll do other things as well. They'll put something in someone's drink, etc., etc. And often the case, it can be some guy abusing some woman, but often it can be a guy abusing a guy. And that's what we see here. Homosexuality is what is implied here. Okay? Now, it's interesting. It's not just from here, because if we keep reading the book of Genesis, if you turn to Genesis chapter number 19, and interesting, this is another mention of the dangers of alcohol. In Genesis chapter number 19, everyone's familiar with this, with Sodom and Gomorrah. Genesis chapter number 19, and with Sodom and Gomorrah, we're not going to go through that, but notice, this is in the land of Canaan. These are the people that were descended from Canaan. And here we have a whole city that's full of homos, and God actually rains fire and brimstone from heaven and destroys them. But that's not what we're looking at. Look later on in Genesis 19. Look at Genesis 19, verse number 30. Look at verse number 30. And this is talking about, remember, Lot escapes with his family. It says, and Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him. For he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said unto the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us after the manner of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in, and he lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. It came to pass on the morrow that the firstborn said unto the younger, behold, I lay yesternight with my father, let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father. Now this is a pretty disgusting account, isn't it? When you say this is incest. But what's it associated with? It's associated with alcohol. Now in this case, it's the daughters taking advantage of the father. Okay? I would say that's an unusual situation. That's not the normal that we would see. Much more normal would be someone who's a drunk who abuses their children. That would be a more normal case of incest. Not that it's normal, it's abnormal. Okay? It's perverse and it's wicked. But just so we understand, this is what's associated with alcohol. This is what's associated with alcohol, okay? And you might say, well, but hang on, you're just picking out particular ones. You saw that one, wine was bad with Noah. He was saying wine's bad with Lot and his daughters. But aren't there good mentions of wine in the Bible? Okay? In fact, if we turn between Genesis 19 and Genesis 9, we'll find Genesis chapter 14. Genesis chapter number 14 and verse number 18. Genesis chapter 14 and verse number 18. Genesis 14:18 says, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thine hand, and he gave him tithes of all. So notice here, this is Melchizedek, the king of Salem. And what's he bringing out? He's bringing out bread and wine, and he's blessing him. So this sounds like a good thing. So you might ask though, hang on, what is Melchizedek doing with wine? Isn't he a king? Didn't we read back in Proverbs chapter number 31? Proverbs chapter number 31, what did it say in Proverbs 31? It said, it is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes strong drink. So, what's going on here? I mean, does it make sense? It's saying, yeah, don't drink wine, but it's fine for this king to drink wine. The king shouldn't drink wine. But not only that, not only is Melchizedek a king, he's also a priest. Melchizedek it says he was king of Salem, but also says he was priest of the Most High God. So he's a king and a priest. Now look at Leviticus chapter number 10. Leviticus chapter number 10. Leviticus chapter number 10 and verse number 8. Leviticus chapter number 10 and verse number 8. Says, and the Lord spake unto Aaron, saying, now remember Aaron, that's Moses' brother, what was he? He was the priest. He was performing the office of a priest. Okay, and his sons went on and did that as well after him. And the Lord spake unto Aaron, saying, do not drink wine, nor strong drink, thou, nor thy sons with thee, when you go into the tabernacle of the congregation, lest ye die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that ye may put difference between holy and unholy, and between unclean and clean, and that you may teach the children of Israel all the statutes which the Lord hath spoken unto them by the hand of Moses. He said, look, Aaron, you and your sons don't drink wine, don't drink strong drink, And he says this is something that's forever. And he says, and he gives the reason. He says that you may put difference between holy and unholy, and between unclean and clean. So you can tell the difference. Remember we saw earlier on when people are drinking, their judgment goes out the window. And God says, he says, don't do this lest ye die. And if you read earlier in the chapter, God had already killed 2 of Aaron's sons that offered strange fire before the Lord, and God had killed them. So he's already killed 2 of Aaron's sons, and then he's saying, you and your other sons don't drink wine lest you die. I think something you'd want to take heed of. If God's saying, don't do this lest you die. Now you might say, but hang on, how does that sort of fit in? I mean, we've got Leviticus 10 is saying priests don't drink wine. Proverbs 31 is saying kings don't drink wine. Where does that fit in with Genesis 14? Melchizedek, who's actually a type of Christ, and he's blessing Abram, and he's got wine with him. What's the story with that? What you need to understand is that there are different types of wine in the Bible. Okay, the Bible uses the word wine for both what we would think of alcoholic beverage and also for non-alcoholic beverage, what we would call juice. Okay, now the word juice occurs only one time in the Bible. Okay, it occurs in Song of Solomon, chapter 8. It talks about drink of the. I quote it wrong. Song of Solomon, chapter number 8. You don't need to turn there. It's just one verse. I'll glance at. Song of Solomon, chapter 8, verse number 2. It says, "I would cause thee to drink of the spiced wine of the juice of my pomegranate." Okay, so here it's actually talking about like pomegranate juice, and it says spiced wine, and it uses the word wine and juice. And probably the reason is because, it's quite common, rather than using the same word twice, rather than talking about the wine of the wine, it says the wine of the juice, that's all it is. But the Bible uses the word wine in places when we would use the word juice. And let me just prove to that. Have a look at Proverbs chapter number 3. Proverbs chapter number 3. Okay, so it's all very well for me to say, I'm making this claim that the Bible uses the word wine when it's actually talking about what we think is like just some sort of grape juice or something like that. But how do you know that's right? You might think, I think that's a load of rubbish. When we say wine, we mean alcohol. So I think you're just making that up. Well, let's have a look. The Bible says prove all things. Proverbs chapter number 3 and verse number 9. Proverbs chapter number 3, verse number 9 says, "Honour the Lord with thy substance, and with the first fruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine." Now, what's coming out of these wine presses? Wine. Your presses, think of a wine press, think you have the wine press and people tread it underfoot and then the stuff comes out. What's coming out of there? It says the presses shall burst out with new wine. The stuff that's coming out of there is wine. But has it been fermented? Has it gone through this process to turn it into an alcoholic beverage? No, yet the stuff that's coming out is actually wine. Have a look at Isaiah chapter number 16. Isaiah chapter number 16. Isaiah chapter number 16 and verse number... Isaiah 16 verse number 10. Isaiah 16:10 says, "And gladness is taken away, and joy out of the plentiful field, and in the vineyards there shall be no singing, neither shall there be shouting. The treaders shall tread out no wine in their presses. I've made their vintage shouting to cease." But notice what it's saying here. The treaders, so what do they normally tread out in the presses? What normally comes out of the presses? When they're chomping under their feet, what comes out? What comes out is wine. Have a look at Isaiah chapter 27. Isaiah chapter 27 and verse number 2. Isaiah chapter 27 and verse number 2. Isaiah 27, verse number 2 says, "In that day sing ye unto her a vineyard of red wine." So is a vineyard full of red wine? I thought a vineyard would be full of grapes. And what's inside those grapes? Grape juice. Now, if someone takes those grapes and squeezes them and takes the juice and then ferments it and turns it into wine, but they wouldn't be keeping that in the vineyard, would they? That'd be in the wine cellar or something like that. So look, it's a vineyard that is full of red wine. Have a look at Isaiah chapter 65. Isaiah chapter 65. Isaiah chapter 65 and verse number 8. Isaiah chapter 65 verse number 8 says, "Thus saith the Lord, as the new wine is found in the cluster, and one saith, destroy it not, for blessing is in it. So will I do for my servants' sakes, that I may not destroy them all." So notice here, the new wine is found in the cluster. What's that talking about? A cluster of grapes. The wine is in the cluster of grapes. And also says, a blessing is in it. It's talking about, it's a good thing. Okay? It's a good thing. You might say, oh, hang on. Did people really drink juice? In fact, I read something earlier on where a guy was claiming in Bible times, no one drank juice. No one drank juice in Bible times. It was all alcohol. Now that's pretty crazy, a crazy thing to suggest, I mean, imagine if you knew someone that never ever drank juice and all they ever drank was wine. Wouldn't you think, I mean, that person would be some sort of drunkard, but have a look at Genesis chapter number 40. Because people drank juice. People have drunk grape juice as long as there's been people. Okay? I mean, back in Noah's time, Noah had a vineyard. Sure, he got drunk, but I guarantee other people would have plucked the grapes from, and squeezed them and got some juice out and drunk it. I guarantee. People are not daft. Look at Genesis chapter 40, verse number 11. Genesis 40, verse number 11. And this is, remember how Joseph was in the prison, he had the butler and the baker and stuff, and they had their dreams and stuff. And he's talking about this here in verse number 11. And he says, and Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes. See what he do? I took the grapes, and I pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. So this is the butler saying, I took grapes, I squeezed them into the cup, and I gave it to Pharaoh, I gave it to the king. Sounds like he's drinking grape juice to me, okay? So it's important we understand that, the word wine, as we saw earlier in Isaiah, it can be used to refer to both to alcoholic wine, because there's plenty in Isaiah about people vomiting and all that sort of bad examples, but there's also good examples saying wine is found in the cluster. Now, it's true that there can be trace elements of alcohol in fruit juice of all sorts, In fact, actually, I was reading about this. All sorts of foods and drinks. Actually, you've got this. I was looking. This is a study I was reading called "Ethanol Content of Various Foods and Soft Drinks." And notice that in soft drinks and the potential for interference with a breath alcohol test. And this is actually a serious scientific study that was done, looking at the fact because there is actually alcohol found in everyday food and drink. Okay, I mean, for example, one of the things that's listed here was Diet 7-Up. Has got 0.075% alcohol in Diet 7-Up. Okay? But you're never going to get drunk or have any effect from drinking 7-Up. Okay? Foods as well. Okay, now they've got stuff, for example, Downey's original Jim Beam Kentucky bourbon cake. Okay, obviously that would have alcohol in it. But, what else did I say? Crumpets. 0.1%. 0.1% alcohol found in a crumpet. Domino's pizza crust. We had some of those on Friday. 0.088 in the edge and 0.081 in the base. Okay, all sorts of different foods that you've got it. But the thing you need to understand is that no one's ever going to, and that's the reason they did this study was because if someone had just had something, then it could give them some detectable amount in the mouth. And obviously, think about most countries would have 0% alcohol. You're allowed when you're like under 20 or whatever, just a new driver and stuff like that. And so it's an important thing. They talk about steps to avoid anything being done. But you're never going to get drunk. You never get intoxicated from eating Domino's pizza. You might engorge yourself. You might feel sick. You might vomit. But you're not going to be intoxicated. Okay? And so, but the thing about it is, when we look at an alcoholic drink versus a non-alcoholic drink, it's pretty obvious which is which. I can bring my Diet 7-Up can up here, and you're going to look at that. And even though you now know that there's a little bit of alcohol in there, no one's ever going to be affected by drinking that. Okay? Compared to if I bring up, a can of Speight's or, whatever, some other sort of alcohol. You know that there's clearly a difference. We can tell the difference, okay? Now, an interesting thing is when you look back at Bible times as well, that I know a lot of people these days, well, some people do. Some people like the idea of cooking with alcohol. Okay, we read about wasn't there a cake there, someone's cake where they used alcohol in it. Now, when you generally cook with alcohol, it will actually lose the alcohol content pretty much from there because alcohol evaporates at 78 degrees Celsius, which means when you're cooking the food, if it gets hot, the alcohol is actually going to disperse. Okay, it's going to disappear. But also, have you ever wondered why? In the Bible, there's other examples where we can see people drinking wine when it clearly can't have been alcohol. It clearly cannot have been alcoholic wine. If you look, for example, at 1 Samuel chapter number 25. 1 Samuel chapter number 25. 1 Samuel chapter number 25. You see, sometimes people think people in the old days were pretty daft and they didn't know much. But the fact is, the stuff that we do today, people have done for years and years. Did you know that if you go to the shop and buy like a thing of orange juice, more often than not it'll say it's made from concentrate? Have you noticed that? You can get stuff that's pure orange juice, but most of the stuff it says it's made from concentrate. Why do you think it would be made from concentrate? The reason it's made from concentrate is because it's actually cheaper to transport. You can concentrate the drink. In other words, you can get rid of most of the fluid, so you concentrate it, and you can then transport a whole pile of that easily, and then you just add water. And so that's sort of the principle. But in Bible times, they knew about that. And in fact, they did that. If you're there in 1 Samuel chapter number 25, 1 Samuel chapter 25 and verse number 18, says, then Abigail made haste. And this is when, we won't go through the whole story, but basically David was going to come because they'd been looking after her husband Nabal, they'd been looking after stopping people from, attacking the flocks and stuff like that. They'd been protecting his stuff. But then they sort of said, can you sort of reward us and give us a bit of food or something like that? And Nabal wasn't having a bar of it, so they were going to come and destroy him, okay? And so his wife, Abigail, finds out about this, and so she's trying to stop them. It says, then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves, notice this, 200 loaves of bread. Because the people that are coming, it might be about 400 men or something like that that's coming. Took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep ready dressed and 5 measures of parched corn and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs and laid them on asses. And she's basically taking a whole pile of food to take them. But notice what she has here. She's got 200 loaves of bread. She's got 5 sheep. She's got 5 measures of parched corn, doesn't sort of say how much that is, 100 clusters of raisins, 200 cakes of figs. But how many bottles of wine does she have? 2. So she's going to feed hundreds of men, and she's taking hundreds of this and hundreds of that, and 5 sheep, big things, and a couple of bottles of wine. How's that going to go? Okay? But if what she was doing was taking, as what was commonly used in, concentrate, you take it where they are, and then you just mix it with water, and you're good to go. Okay? And that's not the only place. It says the same thing, for example, in 2 Samuel, chapter number 16. 2 Samuel, chapter number 16. 2 Samuel, chapter number 16, and verse number 1. 2 Samuel, chapter 16, and verse number 1. And when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 of summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. Only 1 bottle of wine. All this hundreds of other stuff, but only 1 bottle of wine. And now actually look at the next verse. It says, and the king said unto Ziba, what meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, the asses be for the king's household to ride on, and the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine that such as be faint in the wilderness may drink. And notice what it's for. This is something that's going to help you. Like if someone's faint in the wilderness, if they're exhausted, giving them alcohol is not actually going to be a helpful thing. It's a dangerous thing to give someone alcohol in that situation. But a bit of fruit juice, get a bit of sugar into bloodstream, absolutely, that's something that's going to be helpful. Okay, now, just to be clear though, in Bible times, there would have been more fuzziness between alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks. Okay, some people take this to this sort of an extreme level, and I would never use cough mixture. I would never do this. If this is some fermented drink that could have some trace element. Because as we saw before, it's in all sorts of foods and drinks. Okay, so there would have been more fuzziness back then, because also in Bible times they didn't have refrigeration. They didn't have easy methods, I wouldn't imagine, of testing the alcohol in something to know how much it was, etc. Today, however, it's much more clear cut. Anything that's got 0.5% of alcohol or more, it's got to have a label on it saying, hey, look, there's alcohol in here. Okay, you have to have that. And so it's an important thing to understand that back in those times, it's not as though, because the same drink, a non-alcoholic drink, if you leave it around for ages, unrefrigerated, over time you can find that a percentage of alcohol can increase in that. Okay, depending on what you're doing with it. And that's why in the Old Testament, the major things you read in the Bible is there's lots of scriptures that basically forbid drunkenness or anything like it. Okay, there's lots of scriptures about that. I mean, look at Isaiah chapter number 5. Isaiah chapter number 5. Actually, I'll just read you out, just save you some time, because I don't want to take too much time there. Isaiah chapter number 5, verse 11 says, woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, that continue until night, till wine inflame them. It sounds like around the varsity here. Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, and men of strength to mingle strong drink. Verse 23, which justify the wicked for a reward, and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Therefore, as the fire devoureth the stubble, and the flame consumeth the chaff, so their root shall be as rottenness, and their blossom shall go up as dust, because they have cast away the law of the Lord of hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Notice there that also that alcohol is associated with what? Ignoring God's word, cast away the law. And he says, with a priest, you're not going to be able to tell what's right and wrong. Your judgment will go. Isaiah chapter 19 verse 14 says, "The Lord hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit." Does that sound like something we should be into? Not at all. Look at Proverbs chapter number 4. Proverbs chapter number 4 and verse number 14. Proverbs chapter number 4. Proverbs chapter 4 and verse number 14. Proverbs 4:14. It says, "Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men." Notice this. Avoid it. Pass not by it. Turn from it and pass away. For they sleep not except they've done mischief, and their sleep is taken away unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. Is alcohol associated with violence? Absolutely it is. Okay, Proverbs chapter 20, this is probably one of the most famous verses. Proverbs chapter 20, verse number 1. Proverbs chapter 20, verse number 1. Proverbs 20, verse 1 says, "Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise." Notice it says there, wine is a mocker. It doesn't say drinking too much wine is the trouble. It says wine itself is a mocker. Strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. Look at Proverbs chapter number 23. Proverbs chapter number 23. Proverbs chapter 23 and verse number 20. Proverbs 23:20 says, "Be not among wine bibbers, among rioters, eaters of flesh, for the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags." Look down at verse number 29. Verse number 29, Proverbs 23:29 says, "Who hath woe? Who hath sorrow? Who hath contentions? Who hath babbling? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of eyes?" Does this sound like something you want? Do you want these? Woe, sorrow, contentions or fightings, babbling, talking nonsense, wounds without cause, redness of eyes. Does that sound like something you want? Well, who has it? They that tarry long at the wine. They that go to seek mixed wine. He says, "Look not thou upon the wine, when it is red, when it giveth his colour in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. At the last it biteth like a serpent and stingeth like an adder. Thine eyes shall behold strange women, and thine heart shall utter perverse things. Yea, thou shalt be as he that lieth down in the midst of the sea, or as he that lieth upon the top of a mast. They have stricken me, shalt thou say, and I was not sick. They have beaten me, and I felt it not. When shall I awake? I will seek it yet again." So notice it's talking about, it's just a bad thing. You're going to see things you shouldn't be seeing. You're going to be thinking things you shouldn't be thinking. And it even talks about that whole, "When shall I wake? I'll seek it again." We see the addiction that's associated in there, you know. And so the Bible's really clear. It's saying it's a bad thing. Now, some people have some objections. They say, "But hang on, surely there are some positive mentions in the Bible." I mean, there are things like Psalm 104. Psalm 104 and verse number 14. Psalm 104 and verse number 14. Psalm 104 verse 14 says, talking about God, "He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth, and wine that maketh glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face to shine, and bread which strengtheneth man's heart." So saying, look, yeah, it's a good thing. But of course, when you understand that there is alcoholic wine and non-alcoholic wine, it's fine for God to say, because it's a blessing. It's something that comes from God. You see, God doesn't make alcoholic wine. But does God cause plants to grow, the grapes to grow, the sun to shine, the rain to fall? God does that, but God doesn't take it and then turn it into some poison. Because, of course, that's what alcohol is. It's actually a poison. That's why they have the expression intoxicated, because it's toxic, you know? And the thing about it is, when you know how there's these trace elements of it in all these foods and drinks, the reason why it has no effect is because your body can actually process it and neutralise it at very low levels. But of course, if you increase the level beyond what your body can handle, then it builds up, and then it goes throughout the bloodstream, it goes and affects your brain, etc. All these sorts of things. Okay? And there's other things, we won't bother turning here. Deuteronomy 14 talks about how you can bring wine, and God actually commanded them for when they were making offerings and stuff. It says bring wine and strong drink and stuff. But of course, once again, that makes perfect sense for that to be non-alcoholic. Okay, what you say strong drink? Well, what's strong is just referring to something strong. You ever had a strong cup of coffee? I haven't. I don't actually like coffee, but some people are into that. You can have a strong cup versus a weak cup. You know, have what they call those little wee ones they have, where they have like a wee shot of it. It's obviously a lot stronger, and they don't have as much. Okay, but that's not saying it's alcohol. It's just strong. It's just simple as that. Okay. Now, some people say, but hang on, what about 1 Corinthians chapter number 11? Let's get into the New Testament, because most of the people that I've come across that are in favour of moderate drinking, they actually use the New Testament is what they're using to try and promote drinking. 1 Corinthians chapter number 11, verse number 21, they'll say this. Verse number 20, or maybe verse number 20 says, "When you come together, therefore, unto one place, this is not to eat the Lord's Supper, for in eating one taketh before other his own supper, one is hungry and another is drunken." So look, these people are getting drunk. Obviously, it must be alcohol. It must be alcoholic wine for the Lord's Supper. Well, no, because drunken doesn't necessarily... When we say drunken, we're generally talking about someone who's drunk, okay? But that's not what it necessarily means. The word itself doesn't actually mean that. I mean, if you look at Luke chapter 17, Luke 17 and verse number 8, Luke 17 and verse number 8, Luke 17:8 says, maybe start in verse 7, it says, "But which of you having a servant ploughing or feeding cattle will say unto him by and by, when he is come from the field, Go and sit down to meat? And will not rather say unto him, Make ready wherewith I may sup, and gird thyself and serve me, till I have eaten and drunken, and afterward thou shalt eat and drink." So notice, eaten and drunken are just the past tense of eat and drink. In the present, you eat and drink, whereas in the past, it's eaten and drunken. Okay? I mean, it says the same thing in Lamentations chapter number 5. Lamentations chapter number 5 and verse number 4. Lamentations 5 and verse number 4. No, Lamentations 5:4 maybe. Oh, sorry, I'm in Lamentations 4:5. Lamentations 5 verse 4 says, "We have drunken our water for money, and our wood is sold unto us." Notice that, drunken, and it's just talking about water. Okay? And so just like the word wine, the word drunken can also refer to drinking something which could be alcoholic. I mean, it does talk about people being drunkards and stuff like that. Now, the other places people will use is they will go to somewhere like First Timothy. They'll use the qualifications for being like a pastor or a bishop or an elder in the church. They'll say, look, here's the qualifications, and one of them is related to drinking. It says in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 3, it says they should be not given to wine. Not given to wine. And in fact, then it says in verse number 8, talking about the deacons, it says, "Likewise must the deacons be grave, not double-tongued, not given to much wine." So it's saying, look, the deacons shouldn't be drinking much wine. Titus chapter 1 and verse number 7, same sort of thing. Titus chapter 1 and verse number 7 says, "For a bishop must be blameless as a steward of God, not self-willed, not soon angry, not given to wine, no striker, not given to filthy lucre." Okay? In fact, chapter number 2, also of Titus, talks about that. It says, "The aged woman likewise, they be in behaviour as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children." Okay? And so, over and over we see it talks about, don't be given to much wine. And you say, well, which way? Is this referring to alcoholic wine? Is this referring to non-alcoholic wine? I mean, you could say it, it could refer to either, bearing in mind that back in Bible times there was more of a grey area in the sense that the wine, just the regular grape juicy stuff, would be likely to have, a bit more alcohol in it because of lack of refrigeration and stuff like that. The means of measuring it and all that sort of stuff. But of course, even if it was just a purely non-alcoholic wine, there's still reasons to say why they shouldn't be given too much of it. Okay, there's reasons why you shouldn't have a lot of it. Because the Bible actually talks about where even something like honey. Is honey a good thing? Yeah, honey's a good thing. The Bible talks about honey, butter and honey shall he eat, and John the Baptist and all that sort of stuff. But it also says in the Bible, it talks about not having too much honey. For example, in Proverbs chapter number 25. Proverbs chapter 25 and verse number 16. Proverbs chapter 25 and verse number 16. Proverbs 25 and verse number 16. It says, "Hast thou found honey? Eat so much as sufficient for thee, lest thou be filled therewith and vomit." Verse number 27. "It is not good to eat much honey. So for men to search their own glory is not glory." So saying, look, honey's fine, but don't have too much. Okay? And so there's even just something there's nothing sinful about honey, is there? But having too much of it. I mean, because what? If you eat too much of something, that's going to make you a glutton. Now you think about it. You think about some of these churches that there would have been in these early Testament, New Testament times. You've got the bishops, you've got the pastors, you've got the deacons, and people would be having the Lord's Supper, wouldn't they? So they'd be having wine, and there'd be a lot of it there, wouldn't there? Because we read about thousands of people. Wouldn't there be the tendency where you could easily think, "Oh, I'm going to knock a lot of that back"? And it's not saying that they shouldn't be in the sense of being a drunkard, because the Bible already says in 1 Corinthians chapter number 5, if someone's a drunk, they should be thrown out of the church. You're not allowed in the church if you're drunk. Same thing as if you're a fornicator. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, the Bible says they should be thrown out. So what sense would it say, the deacon's not allowed to be given to much wine? Well, if he already was given to much wine, he'd be thrown out for being a drunk. So it doesn't really make sense to say that, okay? And so the thing about it is that, the Bible makes it really clear it's something that we shouldn't have anything to do with, okay? The alcoholic wine. Now, Paul says to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 5, he actually tells Timothy to take a little wine. It says, 1 Timothy 5 verse 23, he says, drink no longer water, but use a little wine for thy stomach's sake and often infirmity. He says, for your health, drink some wine. Well, guess what? The thing about that is, it's actually healthy for you. It's good. Wine is good for you, not alcoholic wine. Now, there's been lots of studies. You read about studies, they say, red wine in particular, they say red wine's really good for you. They've done all these studies. But do you know what else they've done? They found that the same benefits you get from red wine, you get from red grape juice. Because it's not the alcohol that does you good. It's not the alcohol, it's the other stuff that's in there. The riboflavins, or all the, whatever the stuff is that's in grape, it's good for you. Okay, it produces the same thing. It alters the chemistry of your blood, and it's got all sorts of beneficial effects. But it's there regardless of that, And so we need to understand, moderation is something, it's good. It's good. Moderation is good when it comes to sweet things. Okay? But not when it comes to alcohol. It's something that we shouldn't get into at all. Now, there are some other passages. Actually, one other thing I should mention. Turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter number 5, just before Timothy. 1 Thessalonians chapter number 5. 1 Thessalonians chapter number 5, verse number 22. This is a great verse. This is a verse you should underline in your Bible if you're into that. Verse number 22 of 1 Thessalonians 5 says, abstain from all appearance of evil. Now the Bible says you should abstain from even looking like you're doing something wrong. Abstain from all appearance of evil. Now, coincidentally, because obviously there's been drunkards around outside this morning, when I was cleaning up, I picked up this. Okay, this is a bottle of whatever this is, Hawke's Bay Vintage 2017, from outside. Now, while I'm preaching, I've been drinking some water. I've had a couple of sips. Okay, keeps my mouth, keeps my mouth from getting too dry and stuff like that. Will there be a problem if this had, maybe even a low alcohol wine or something like that? But then even just a little bit in there. And if I'd had a couple of sips of this to wet my whistle, would that be fine? Would you think, hey, this is fine? Here's the pastor up here preaching to us, and as he preaches to us, he has a sip of wine and puts it down. He has a sip of wine and puts it down. Only two, and that's all I have all day. Is that all right? Or does that look like something? Does that have the appearance of evil? It does. Well, if it's wrong for me to do it here, is it okay? Or when I go home and sit down and have a meal, then it's fine to do it then. Does things alter? But depending on where you are. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if someone came to church this morning and they were dressed in their underwear, would you think, hey, that's fine? Or that's not fine? But if you took that same underwear, let's say you made it coloured underwear, and they go off and jump in a swimming pool, what's the difference? What's the difference? All it is because our standards change because the world's standards change. And the fact is today, we actually, unless you have a no circulars on your letterbox, which we do, some will come past and they'll put in your letterbox pamphlets containing naked people. It's stuff that 20, 30 years ago people would have said that's pornography. That's what they would have said. But now it's fine. Because we're just selling underwear. We're just selling underwear. No, it's like God's standards don't change. And this is a different sort of subject, but God's standards don't change. So, back on alcohol, there are a few passages, as I said, which people bring up to say it's fine for Christians to drink alcohol. For example, I say Jesus turning the water into wine. But of course, once you understand there is alcoholic and non-alcoholic, then that makes perfect sense. Because it does say, when it talks about Jesus turning the water into wine, it talks about how the people are well drunken. Whatever they were drinking, they'd already had plenty of it. So if you're going to say that's alcoholic, you're saying Jesus is giving alcohol to people who are already drunk. Does that fit in? No, because Jesus is without sin. He's without sin. He never did anything sinful, ever. Okay? And so we need to understand, it depends what sort. It's not that hard to figure out which sort's being talked about. Look at maybe one of the last places we'll turn is Deuteronomy chapter 32. Deuteronomy chapter 32. Actually, I shouldn't promise that because I might turn to a few other places. Deuteronomy chapter 32. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse number... I'll start in verse number 1. It says, "Give ear, O ye heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. For my doctrine shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, and as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. Because I will publish the name of the Lord, ascribe ye greatness unto our God." Notice this. "He is the rock. His work is perfect. For all his ways are judgment, a God of truth, and without iniquity, just and right is he." So what is God? God is a rock. God is called the rock. Now look at verse number 9. Verse number 9. It says, "For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land, in a waste howling wilderness. He led him about, he instructed him, he kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirreth up her nest, flutteth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings. So the Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. He made him ride on the high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields, and he made him to suck honey out of the rock, and oil out of the flinty rock, butter of kine, and milk of sheep, with fat of lambs, and the rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats, with the fat of kidneys of wheat, and thou didst drink the pure blood of the grape." Notice that there. So this is talking about God's people, and he's saying you drank the pure blood of the grape. That sounds like non-alcoholic to me. But then if you look in verse number 31, then it says, "For their rock is not as our rock." Now this is now talking about people that have got a different rock. This is talking about people who are serving a false god. "For their rock is not as our rock, even our enemies themselves being judges. For their vine is the vine of Sodom, and of the fields of Gomorrah. And their grapes are grapes of gall, their clusters are bitter. Their wine is the poison of dragons and the cruel venom of asps." So what's it saying here? This is, notice it's different. Their rock is not as our rock, and then it talks about their vine, and then it talks about their wine. It's different. We had the pure blood of grapes earlier on, and here it talks about this different sort of, and it's associated with dragons and asps, snakes. That matches exactly with what we saw in Proverbs chapter number 23. Proverbs chapter number 23, what did it say in Proverbs chapter 23? Proverbs chapter 23, it says, "Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth its colour in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. At the last it biteth like a serpent and stingeth like an adder." That's exactly the same thing as we saw in Deuteronomy chapter number 32. So, in conclusion, the title of the sermon this morning, "It is not for kings to drink wine." That's not saying that you can never have a drink of juice. Okay, that's good for your health. But do remember, use moderation. Don't go overboard. I mean, a lot of pastors could do with that. A lot of pastors could do with remembering that. I mean, it's interesting that he says, particularly the pastors, the elders, the bishops, the deacons. How many pastors have you seen that have got great big bellies on them? The Bible warns against gluttony. The Bible warns, and the fact is, when you're younger, sure, you can drink more sweet stuff and because you're burning up. But later on, if you're more sedentary, you need to have moderation. Okay, even in things that are not sinful things. Okay, so use moderation. But as far as alcoholic wine goes, Leviticus 10:9 is a clear instruction. Do not drink wine. And he said it'll be forever. You say, but hang on, that was for the priests. Well, Proverbs 31 said, it's not for kings to drink wine. You said, well, that's for kings, that's for priests. Have a look at Revelation chapter number 1. Revelation chapter 1 and verse number 6. Revelation chapter number 1 and verse number 6. Revelation chapter 1 verse number 6. Revelation chapter 1 verse number 6 says, "And hath made us kings and priests unto God and his Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen." The Bible says that we are kings and priests. Actually, it says in 1 Peter chapter number 2. 1 Peter chapter number 2, it says, "But ye," 1 Peter 2:9, "ye are a chosen generation, a royal," sounds like a king, "priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people." That means different. "That ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of darkness into his marvellous light, which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. Dearly beloved, I beseech you, strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul." So keep away from lusting after things that we shouldn't lust after, things that are going to have a bad effect on us. Now, if all you had was the Old Testament, it would be very easy to show we shouldn't drink alcohol. Definitely it would be. Most people who are in favour of moderate drinking, they use the New Testament to support their view. You know, I had a pastor tell me, we're New Testament Christians. And he didn't want to look at any of the Old Testament scriptures I want to show him about the dangers of alcohol. But there is actually a word that's used many times in the New Testament, which actually isn't used in the Old Testament. And that is the word sober. Have a look at Titus chapter number 2. Titus chapter number 2. You see, the Bible, and although the New Testament, there are some verses where people like to try and twist to say, oh, it's fine to be drinking wine. The Bible makes it really clear in Titus chapter number 2, and verse number 2, it says that the aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound of faith, in charity and patience. Verse number 4 says that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children. Verse number 6 says, young men likewise exhort to be sober-minded. So the Bible says over and over, old men, young men, you know, young women, we should be sober. We should be sober. And sober means you're not influenced by alcohol. Okay? Now you're not going to be influenced by some, you know, trace elements in what you're eating, or a little bit of orange juice or something. That's not going to... But drinking something, you go to a shop and it says this is a percentage of alcohol in it. That's going to affect you. That's going to affect you. So it's nothing we should have to do with it. Look at 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter number 1. 1 Peter 1 verse 13. It says, wherefore gird up the loins of your mind and be sober. That's a clear instruction. Be sober and hope to the end for the grace that is to be brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Chapter number 4 and verse number 7. But the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. Chapter 5 verse number 8. 1 Peter 5:8 says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil is a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Turn back to Proverbs 31. This is the last scripture. Proverbs 31. The Bible is really clear. We shouldn't have, as believers, we shouldn't have anything to do with alcohol. It's going to lead us down the wrong path, and there's plenty of examples of where it led people, where it led Noah, you know, where it led Lot's family, where it led all sorts of people. You know, it's not something we should have anything to do with. You're back there in Proverbs 31, Proverbs chapter 31. Look at verse number. I'll start with verse number 1. It says, the words of King Lemuel, the prophecy that his mother taught him. What, my son, and what the son of my womb, and what the son of my vows? Give not thy strength unto woman, nor thy ways to that which destroyeth kings. Didn't the Bible say we're kings and priests? This is something that will destroy kings. This will destroy the life of a believer. And I mean, whether you know this or not, did you know there are people that have a natural tendency to become addicted to alcohol, to become addicted to drugs of various sorts? Do you know there are people that are like that? And do you know how you can tell? You can't. You don't know. Now, some people are not that way. The majority of people, I would say, are not that way. Okay, I've drunk plenty of alcohol in my time. I've been drunk many, many times. Okay, it's something I'm ashamed of, something I'm not proud of, but I don't think I have the tendency for that, in all honesty, because I stopped. Okay, that was before I even got saved. I stopped drinking alcohol. And there are many people that can do that, but there are also people who've started and they can't stop. And they can't stop, and they're enslaved by it. So what sense would it make to try it and to think, I wonder if I'm going to be like that or not? And what sense would it make when there are people like this? And you can go, nothing to do with the Bible, you can look in the secular literature and find that there are people that would get addicted just like that. The first time they drink, that they actually end up getting hooked. And that's just true. So why would I say, look, hey, come on, church, come and take part of the Lord's Supper and I'll give you some alcohol? Would that make any sense at all? It wouldn't. Okay? It's give not thy that which destroyeth kings. Verse number 4. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes strong drink, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted. We see once again, it affects your judgment. I just touch on verses 6 and 7. It does say then, give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that be of heavy hearts. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more. Some people like to take those verses and say, oh, there you go, so it's fine to drink. Because like it says, give strong drink to those that are ready to perish. I mean, that's just grasping at straws. It's grasping at straws to take that. I mean, those that are ready to perish. Does that describe a believer? You know, the Bible says, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believe them should not perish, but have everlasting life. This is not talking about the belief. This is, I mean, if anything, it's just like a throwaway. It's like a sarcastic statement. He's like, it's not for you to drink wine. He says, look, the bum in the gutter, you let him drink. But is it really saying, hey, look, go to the bum in the gutter and give him something to drink? No, it's not. Okay? And to try and take the clear scripture and say, don't drink alcohol, it's going to destroy your life, it's going to destroy your mind, don't have anything to do with it. And then say, well, we just ignore all those plain ones and we take this and say, oh, but it's fine to drink because of that. No, it's not something we shouldn't have anything to do with. The Bible makes it really clear. It is not for kings. It is not for kings to drink wine. And if you're saved, if you're a believer, you are a king. You are a priest. And that means we should live holy lives which are pleasing to God. Let's pray. Gracious Lord, we thank you for your word. And Lord, I pray you'd help each one of us to take heed of the warnings in your word. Help us not to be people that would just treat your word lightly, but help us to believe every word. Lord, your word says every word of God is pure. He's a shield unto them that put their trust in him. Lord, help us to trust you. Help us to trust every single word. As you said, Lord, man shall live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. And Lord, I just pray you'd help us to take heed to that. Lord, we thank you once again that we're not saved by not drinking. We're not saved by keeping the law. We're saved simply by faith in you. But help us, Lord, to walk in a way that pleases you. As you said, Lord, to your disciples, if you love me, keep my commandments. Help us to show our love for you by walking in a way that pleases you. We thank you and praise you and love you. In Jesus' precious name, amen.